Welcome, everybody, and a happy Wednesday to you all. This is Nasira from Thrive, Not Just Survive. I'm so glad that you've all been joining me on this journey as I interview impact-driven women entrepreneurs who are making their mark in terms of fulfilling their purpose, their missions of how they want to serve their communities and their tribes. And today I have a really special guest on. Her name is Kristen, and I met her through a networking group. So I know for a lot of us, we've been doing a lot of networking, obviously virtually because we can't physically go out. But what I found during this time networking virtually is that I'm able to actually connect more with people in different groups because the time of traveling to the networking events has actually been taken out of my agenda. So it has been really powerful in meeting some very amazing people, especially women that are in business for themselves and creating a niche market. So I met Kristen at a networking group, as I said, and she is the queen of copyright. And I want to have this conversation because a lot of my audience are entrepreneurs who are either starting up or in the middle of creating a business, but haven't really figured out this marketing piece with copywriting. And this conversation has come up in so many of my conversations that I wanted to bring somebody on that's an expert and that can give you strategies, even as a beginner, that you can implement right away that are easy. So let me bring Kristen on just so we can get this conversation started and she can share her genius with us. Okay, here we go. Hey, Kristen, welcome to the show, and thank you for accepting the invitation for helping my audience learn through your genius. So before we start, I just want to give sort of the audience an overview of who you are and how you got to doing what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Nasira. So I've always loved writing, even as a kid, and I knew that I wanted a career in writing, but I didn't know what yet. So I used to write song lyrics originally, and then I wrote short stories when I was younger. And then as I grew up, I got more invested in journalism, and I really wanted to be a reporter for years. And I eventually applied to the University of Toronto for professional writing and communications. And that's where I had the opportunities to learn so many different writing techniques. I even got to write a book. So I'm also an author, which is super exciting. And I didn't know about copywriting until my fourth year of university, actually. I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that you can make a really good living out of it. And I didn't actually get into it until a little bit after I graduated university. I had the 9-to-5 job that I went directly into, working at a bank, and it wasn't the most exciting thing ever. So to keep up with my creativity, I decided, why don't I just do something on the side as a side gig, right? So I started on a website called Fiverr, where I found different writing gigs on there, and I would write for different businesses. And it was a lot of content writing, so it was a lot of blog posts, articles, social media, things like that. And then I found it wasn't really where my heart was. So I instead switched to sales copy. I learned all about that. I took a bunch of courses. I learned so much while I was at my 9-to-5, and they didn't end up hiring me on. It was just a contract position. So last year in July, I ended that contract. I stopped looking for other jobs because nobody else was hiring me in all these big PR media companies. And I'm like, you know what? Let me just take Copy by Kristen full time. Let's see how it goes. And you know what? Lo and behold, it's been the best decision I've ever made. And so here I am writing copy for online business coaches, or all types of coaches, I should say, and doing sales pages, email sequences, ads. It's been so much fun, and it actually just, it got even better actually since quarantine started, I have to say. Yeah.
That's amazing, right? Like when you kind of take that leap of faith to say, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to try it. It's what's calling you, right? And then you find out when you do it, it's actually better than you even anticipated because you're following that genius, following that light. And I think that's so profound for entrepreneurs that are sort of teeter-tottering between, I don't know if I should, if I shouldn't, wherever they are, whatever job that might be, may not be fulfilling. And I think that's a really important piece that you addressed, is that whatever you were doing, it still wasn't fulfilling you. So then you landed doing Copy by Kristen, which I've put the website up for anybody that wants information or wants to reach out to you. So can you, I wanted to really give people the strategies, like, if there was a certain formula that they could use, even as startups that, may not have marketing budgets, right? But they could learn something that could impact their business. So would you be able to guide us through something, a formula that you help with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. So one very common one, especially you can use even right now, I would say anyone who's watching, grab out a pen and paper and just write this down. It's super easy. So let's say you're writing a social media post about a new product or service that you're coming out with. Something that's very common to use is the 4 Ps formula. And so essentially that is picture, promise, proof, and push. It's super, super simple. Let's just go into it. So picture is essentially paint a really vivid picture for your prospect about the outcome that you're going to give them. What do they really want out of life? And what's the transformation they're looking for? So kind of set the scene for them, sort of. And I like telling people to use visualization as one of the elements. So using sensory words like, touch, taste, like smell, like whatever kind of gets your reader into the mind of like, okay, I could see myself in my new dream home, or I can see $1 million in my bank account, whatever that is for them. That's the picture you have to paint. And then the next thing would be the promise. The promise can be as short as 1 to 2 sentences, and this is the solution that you're going to give them. So that's your product or service, right? And that should be a promise, not so much guaranteed. Obviously, it's like a two-way street, but it should guarantee them results that get them to that end goal. And so to really kind of push them to make a decision, social proof is a huge thing. So that's the third one. Using testimonials, using words from other people, former clients to talk about it. And something really interesting here is that there's an actual little formula for testimonials even. So when you get a testimonial from somebody, ask them just to do 3 things, right? Where they were before they started working with you, a little bit about after they were working with you, and then something they would tell somebody else. That's all you need to ask them to do. It doesn't have to be this long testimonial, because usually sometimes they don't even work, people don't read them. So make it really short and sweet, before, after, and then what they would tell somebody. And then the last one is push. So that's your CTA. So you should have sold them about your product or service during those first 3 points, but this is the time where you're going to really push them to make a decision, or push them to keep reading, or push them to just buy, whatever that is. So that's the 4 Ps. You can use that anywhere and it works every time.
And the CTA, just to be clear, is the call to action.
Yeah,
right? I know we talk in acronyms and it's like, okay, but I just want to be clear just in case somebody's wondering, what's CTA? So when we're doing copy, so my question would be, and of course, I'm going to tap into your genius here, is when you're writing copy, is it about keeping like word, how there's a word count, and should we have it so that it's very tight? Or can it be that you can write in paragraph form? Because I've seen so many different ones on social media.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could write something a little bit longer, but if you are, I suggest writing shorter sentences and not doing anything. Don't use any run-on sentences. Don't drag things on. Copy should be just to get to the point of something, because copy is meant to sell and persuade someone to buy your product, right? So let's say you go into Walmart and you're looking at an advertisement. They never have an entire paragraph on the ad, right? It's just like maybe 3 to 5 words, and it just enticed you to buy. It has to be short and snappy and just pretty much to the point. It has one goal, and that's just to get your prospect to buy whatever it is. So if you can kind of pack all the information into a very short piece, this is what I tell my clients. I'm like, you can say more with less. And a lot of the times we find ourselves thinking we have to write so much to like try to convince somebody to buy our offer. But you know what? It's actually not true, because you don't want to sit there reading a novel, right? Nobody does that in today's age, right? It's just not. We have better things to do than sit there and read it, right? So
well, I think the
it's just
attention
like,
span also on social media is so short, right? That if it doesn't really capture them, they're just going to move on to the next
yeah,
ad or picture or whatever it is.
you're gonna stop reading and you're going to lose a sale right away. So
I want to ask you this because I see a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, like they write their story from pain points. Like, okay, this is how I started and I went through all of this, like divorce, and I, broke down, and then this and no money. But the post itself is so long because it's really going through their life journey. Is that for a different type of outcome?
I would say like, you can write your story. I highly suggest using storytelling in your copy because that's what's going to resonate with your ideal client. And I wouldn't suggest writing the entire thing out because it becomes too long. I would say pick 3 pivotal moments in your story and really capture those. So if there was a really, really low point, let's use the divorce one, for example.
Okay.
So I would say like write your lowest point during that divorce, then write the highest point where you were feeling better, and then what changed in between to help you get from A to B.
Right.
So it's not something where you have to write every single detail, although I do suggest writing certain details to differentiate your story from somebody else's divorce story, because a detail is also very important, but it's also important to get rid of all the fluffy stuff and just kind of get to the point, right? Because again, you don't want to lose your reader. You just want to quickly grab their attention. And I would say like the first line should be something really interesting or whatever, like the climax of the divorce or something something crazy that happened during that time to catch attention and then kind of bring them back through the story.
So it's basically, I mean, if you're looking at the content of it, you want to make sure that you're addressing pain points, like what your audience may be experiencing and how you can, or you have a solution because you've gone through it, or you have a system or something that's happened, is getting them to a solution. Is that what you mean when you say transformation? Yeah.
Transformation is essentially like the solution, like the outcome. I was listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking about pain points and pleasure points. So like the bad things that people don't like, their challenges, and then where they want to be. And they said you need a healthy balance in your copy. You need both. There's not one where you need to write more about their pain points or one where you need to write more about like their desires and the benefits of your offer. It's actually just a good combination of both. So it's just like taking them from that, terrible situation that they're in and then guiding them through to get to the point where they want to be. Essentially, it's like just hold their hand through it. And it's like, I'm going to take you there. I'm going to get you there. But you have to take the first step and want to work with me kind of thing.
And this is really primarily for service-based entrepreneurs, like coaches, technically, like because you're taking them through a journey, right?
You can do that same with a product website. For example, like software as a service companies, like if you're buying a software, they can actually just take you through like, your pain points and then like how, like what the benefits are of like each feature that they have. So you kind of go down like a trail throughout their website. So they use the same thing, like the hero's journey, as they like to call it. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's so powerful, right? When you kind of break it down the way you're breaking it down, it doesn't seem like such a enormous task, right? If you're doing it by yourself, like you don't feel so overwhelmed by like, I don't know what I'm doing. And the easy steps when you break it down like that is manageable for somebody, especially startups. I think, because there's so many different things they're juggling. And really the idea is to get enough traction on their offer to be able to generate the income so that they can continue to grow, and then at some point hire a marketing expert and people that can help with copyright and can help with certain offers, and how do you position them. So I want to talk about maybe more so a little bit about startup. It's very probably critical to know the audience, right? Your audience. Like that's probably one of the main things, because once you figure that out, you can craft your offer and your copy around that. Can you kind of shed some light on why that's so important?
Yeah, so I'm really glad you brought that up because that's something that I tell people all the time. It's like, you can't write copy at all. You can't even start to write it unless you've done your market research. If you haven't gone to get on the phone with your ideal client, like about 10 or 20 of them, or you haven't, posted a survey to get answers, there's no way you're going to be able to sit down and write copy for your product or service, because how would you know what the person is, finding challenging? Like, what are their pain points? Or maybe what do they look for in a solution? You can't just make that stuff up out of your head and pretend like you have to go and do the work prior to sitting down and writing, or even just before you even craft your offer. I would say like market research is probably the number one thing you should do before you start writing anything, because I never went out and talked to my ideal clients. So at the beginning, I started with just business coaches. So I found like 10, 20 business coaches, and I got on the phone with them, or I sent them a questionnaire. And if I didn't know what their challenges were, I wouldn't be able to like craft my offer or write the copy that I do, because I don't know what they're struggling with. I can't, and I can't just guess.
Well, I guess another thing, the thing is though, you can have your own version of what the challenges are, but that might not be the challenge of the audience.
Yeah.
And so if your copy or your ad doesn't work, or it's not necessarily that the ad didn't work. It's just that you didn't address the problem. That could be your problem, but not your tribe's problem, or whoever you're addressing, right? So I think then the testing becomes a little bit skewed, because then you think, well, that didn't work, but really you were not targeting the right audience for that offer to work.
Exactly. And that's why a lot of the time I would suggest, especially if you're doing ads in particular, I would say do A/B testing. So where you write it one way for a particular client, and then write it kind of a different way, same thing, same CTA, same idea, but just for a different kind of demographic, and then see what kind of worked, what didn't, which one converted better, which one led to more traffic, which one had people reading, which people bounced off. Like, it's good to kind of know that stuff, but you wouldn't know unless you like played around with it a few times, right? So it's not like one piece of copy is going to work for everyone. It's just going to work for like a small group of people, essentially.
And I think you pointed out something that I actually took, I had my coach walk me through the whole testing and data, how important it is when we are, researching that ad and putting it out there. But the whole idea of testing it, certain words, certain colors, like even the image itself, right? Video and still image. I mean, there's so many testing elements that have to be addressed, because otherwise you could just look at one ad and say, well, that just didn't bring me the data, or not the data, but the outcome. But without really looking at the data, right, of what you're really trying to accomplish, it doesn't mean the ad was bad. It's just that you need to look at the data and say, what about that ad didn't work? Or worked, right? And I think, for people that are starting out, especially with doing ads, it's not newspaper ads anymore, right? Like, it's all online based. So wherever we are, Facebook or Instagram or any other social media platform, the whole thing is that we're not experts in those areas. And so the testing is really critical, right? Especially if we're not hiring people to do it for us, like to be able to say, get the test out and then know what the data means, and then pivot and pivot and pivot until you get one that is going to give you that ROI, and ROI meaning return on investment. So there's obviously a process to this. It's not like, you just throw one ad out and then everything works and now your business is an empire. Yeah, exactly. And I have to say that it changes, right? It's not something that's static. It changes as things change, what's out in the market changes, what the pain points are and how you're addressing them. And so I think this is constant, right? Like, you would have to continue to work on copy and all of the things you're doing.
A good example of that is when COVID happens, all these businesses had to change their messaging, right? Because they realized more people are going to be at home, or people are going to work from home. They have different challenges. So it's kind of the same thing where they had to like pivot, and they had to just change what their ads, sounded like. Let's say it was like a yoga studio or something. Now they have to talk about online classes and the benefits of staying active at home, and just to keep your mind and body, healthy and things like that. So it's the same thing depending on a situation, and you just kind of change it up depending on that.
Yeah. So it's really, I think this conversation is really important for people that are just kind of looking at either their ads aren't working, or their copy was, something was not something was missing, or they're just startups and don't even know where to begin. So I think you've given a really good strategy of at least where to start and the points that we should be looking at. Now, what are you working on that really, I just want to kind of address sort of where you're at and what you're doing for your clients and how you can help them perhaps make that next step in their business.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my favorite and most bought offers is sales pages. Those are like my favorite thing to work on. And I came out with a new offer recently where it's called the Blast Off Booster. And I essentially help you write your sales page in less than 72 hours. And it comes with a 60 to 90 minute phone call that we do together. You still get the 2 revisions that I usually offer. And we just make it so that you have it just in time for your launch. And the reason for creating this offer is because so many times I have entrepreneurs come to me like a week before their launch, and I'm like, sometimes I'm booked out like 2 to 3 weeks right ahead. So it's hard for me to just kind of do something that quickly. But if I know that they want that, I will block out those 3 days, and that's just for you.
So what is the sales page? Can you just sort of explain what a sales page is? Like for those people that are just starting, may think, well, why do I even need it?
Yeah, sales pages are important if you have one goal, and that one goal, like let's say you're a life coach and you want to sell your life coaching services, or maybe you have this awesome group program coming up and you want to sell that. The sales page is essentially, it's not like your website. It's just a single like long page by itself meant to sell one particular thing.
Okay.
It's only about that one thing. So the sales page, for example, would just be about your life coaching program. So it would start from like, you identify the problem of your ideal client, you go into like their pain points, and then you go into like the transformation you want to give them with this amazing program that you have. And you talk about the offer, the benefits of it, some of the features, and then it's essentially just to get them to click buy now or sign up at the end. It's
so
just
is that going to be then a page on a website, or is it a simple landing page, or is it like
yeah, it's a landing page. Some of them are really short. It depends on your offer. I say it just depends on the price of it. If it's like low mid ticket, it's not that long. If it's like really high ticket, I would say make it longer, but it's just a landing page. So let's say we were talking about ads and somebody clicked on the ad and said, okay, I want to go and learn more. It would just direct them to that landing page.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, just for more information, try to, get them to buy it pretty much.
Right.
Yeah.
And then is that for the client that you're writing the copy for, you're not providing the landing page. Like they would just take whatever you've worked on and then put it into a landing page?
Essentially, yeah. But I also work closely with a designer as well. So if they want, I do the copy part and then we hand it off to the designer that I work with and they can help them put it in there. It depends. Some of my clients like to do it by themselves and they just want me to write the copy. Some of them I work together with the designer and we do it all for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's where the budget comes in, and also your own technology know-how and how much you really want to take a learning curve on if that's not your genius, right? So I always tell my clients, like, there's sometimes you have to look at the value of your time. If you're taking away from really what your genius zone is and how you're serving your clients, and technology isn't one of them, you may want to look at handing that off. In terms of our growth, right? Our time, we only have X number of hours. All of us have to eat and sleep and work in those 24 hours, right? So it's a good idea for people to look at that and say, what is the cost of my time if I really take this thing that I have to learn now, or should I hand it off and look at that as a cost of doing business? But again, it's really where people are at. It's not, like you said, if they want to just take your copyright or copy information and do it themselves, it's an option that they can take, which still gives them very, very good content at least, and then they can figure the technology out. So I really appreciate it. I think this is brilliant. I think what you're doing is amazing. So for those of you who are watching or on replay, if you want to get a hold of Kristen, you can follow her on Instagram at Copy by Kristen, or go to her website, and they can message you, correct? Like if they just want to contact you. Yeah.
Feel free to message.
Awesome. Well, as we end this, is there any parting words that you have for our audience?
I just want to say, if you want to learn more copywriting tips, I educate my audience all the time, and I do mini trainings on my Instagram mostly. So if you follow me on there, you're pretty solid. And when you're ready to invest, I say maybe take some time until you're ready to invest in a really good copywriter. Yeah,
Excellent.
you don't have to do it right away.
Right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and really the 4 Ps. As a coach myself, it's very helpful if we can at least begin with a formula. So thank you again, and I hope to see you back here at some point sharing some more insights.
Of course. Thank you so much, Nazira.
Thank you. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that gave you some insight on copyright, why it's so important, and the formula that she went through. Perhaps you want to watch this on replay and make more notes and apply it. The key to anything that you're learning is application. So if it's just going to be written in your book and then you're not going to follow through on actually doing it, the results won't be there. So for anything we're learning and doing, the idea is to put it into action, and massive action is what gives us massive results. So with that, I want to end this broadcast. I will see you tomorrow. Actually, I'm going to be doing I'm going to share some information with you tomorrow that will be helpful if you are in the entrepreneur journey, or you're in the middle of it and not really seeing the results. So tomorrow we're going to be talking about that. I want to wish you a happy Wednesday. I'll see you tomorrow. Be kind to yourself and to others.